Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Baumstein from the Wallace Center at Winrock International. Welcome to this National Good Food Network webinar entitled Food Hub Key Performance Indicators, presented in partnership with the Greenbelt Fund. Thank you for joining us today. So the Wallace Center is a business unit of Winrock International and is the host of the National Good Food Network webinars. Wallace Center has been a leading organization in the movement for a more sustainable and equitable food system for 35 years. We develop partnerships, pilot new ideas, and advance solutions to strengthen communities through resilient farming and food systems. The National Good Food Network, or NGFN, is an initiative of the Wallace Center that accelerates progress towards the Wallace Center's vision. NGFN is a connector. We connect peer-to-peer, peer-to-expert, and practitioners to best practices. We do all of this at a national scale and sometimes international, as with today with our Canadian friends, so that innovations spread rapidly around the good food world. You can learn more about the work of the Wallace Center at wallacecenter.org and about NGFN at ngfn.org. In particular, we encourage you to dig into the resources on those sites, including our large collection of archived webinars. So as I mentioned, this webinar is presented with support from the Greenbelt Fund. Greenbelt Fund is a nonprofit organization that supports and enhances the viability, integrity, and sustainability of agriculture in Ontario and Ontario's Greenbelt. By helping to overcome challenges and support economic growth, the fund's goal is to create systemic change to increase the amount of local food consumed in the province through grants, education, policy, and networking initiatives. The fund's work has generated a 13-fold return on local food investments, permanently changing the food value chain in Ontario. The Greenbelt Fund is supported in partnership by the Government of Ontario. And I know we have some friends from north of the border joining us today. Hello, and I hope you all are not too frozen. Okay, so that's the background, and now on to the good stuff. Today, we will be digging into key performance indicators, which we also call KPIs, and how food hubs use them to make informed decisions about their businesses. I've heard a key phrase recently around KPIs, which is you manage what you measure. I think it's a really illustrative idea, and I've been keeping it in mind as we've been preparing for this webinar. So the point of this webinar is to show you how two pretty different hubs have used KPIs to measure specific aspects of their businesses in order to better manage them. Let's see. So both of these hubs that we'll hear from today have been successfully operating for over a decade. One is a wholesale hub in Ontario, and the other is a more direct-to-consumer hub in North Carolina. We're hoping that the examples they share will help all kinds of food hubs and food businesses apply these tools to their operations. Up first, we'll be hearing from Grace Mandarano of 100 Kilometer Foods in Toronto. Grace is going to share with us how their hub uses KPIs and some of the lessons she's gained from that process. Grace is a first-generation Canadian. Both of her parents come from farming families in southern Italy. Throughout her childhood, she heard stories of how, as a family and a community, her relatives would work their farms, grow their food, and rear their animals. The connection to their food was undeniable and cherished. 100 Kilometer Foods has become for her a reestablishment of that vital connection to food, where it comes from, how it's grown, and how the greater community benefits and thrives from access to good, clean food. Grace considers financial sustainability and authenticity to be key ingredients to running a successful social enterprise, and hopes that 100 Kilometer Foods can be a conduit to real change in Ontario's food system. Grace, you are on.
Thanks, Ellie. You almost sounded Canadian there with how you pronounce Toronto, so I'm pretty proud of that.
All right, my fiance is Canadian, so he would be super proud to hear that.
So as Ellie mentioned, key performance indicator is anything that you can use to quantify or measure success in your organization, and it can be from any aspect of the business. Why we use key performance indicators is because if you don't know where you are, it's tough to get where you want to be. And I've spent just as much time in this place as the rest of you have. And so it's been vital for us to start measuring some metrics in key areas. So typically you start with a question. For us, these are unfortunately not hypotheticals. 2018 was a bit of a challenging year. So the three main questions we came out of the year with were, why did we miss our sales targets? Why was our cash flow tight? Why were we not profitable? And some of you may be thinking, well, it's obvious because you said, why did we miss our sales targets? But we wanted to know, does the first one explain the other two, or is there more going on here? So the area of focus, first of all, the problem that we identified from sales achievement standpoint was we achieved 89.5% of sales target. It was the first time in 10 years that we missed our sales target. So we obviously wondered, what can we do to ensure that we don't miss them moving forward? Do following years' targets need to be adjusted? Is this just a new normal? And why were our sales reps paid so well at a similar rate to 2017 when we did achieve sales targets and were profitable? So the first thing that we looked at was actual sales achievement versus target. And we did this on a weekly basis. We do this every year on a weekly basis. One thing that we noticed right in the very beginning of the year was our top two accounts from previous years closed, one for renovation and one a bit more permanently switched to a different concept entirely. And obviously when you lose your number one and number two accounts, you don't very easily recover from that. But knowing that looking at those targets and looking at the achievement week to week helped us to see how much of an impact those customers had. We also knew that the province was announcing minimum wage increases, and that created a little bit of panic in the restaurant industry, which resulted directly in chef choices to buy cheaper food. And we knew, because every couple of years we send a customer survey out, we knew from those results that consistently customers buy less than 30% of everything they could buy from us. And so we thought, is it time to revisit previous sales strategies to increase sales within existing accounts as the primary focus, or should we start going out and looking for new business? From a sales commission structure standpoint, our previous commission structure had a base salary and 2.5% of total gross profit for all of their accounts. They were assigned specific accounts. And then to the right here, the KPI that we looked at there, the Band-Aids there are because it said salesman underneath, and I didn't think that was appropriate, so I changed that to reps. But if you take a rep salary plus the expected commissions that they would earn at 100%, plus any other bonus that you intend to pay them at 100% level, divided by that rep's revenue, it gives you a percentage of sales cost. It basically tells you how much that rep costs you as a percentage of what they bring in. And so our target for our field reps at that 100% achievement level was 0.8%, and our actual cost of sales reps was 1.7%. So what that basically meant was they were hitting their commission rates even when they weren't hitting their targets. So a couple of solutions we were able to come up with once we looked at all of those metrics was to enlist a sales consultant to build a strategic sales plan and look even further into other KPIs to figure out how do we get back on track. So that means you forecast potential sales by customer category. So there are customers who are relatively large restaurants but are tapped out in their potential. Those are more maintenance accounts. Then you have restaurants that don't order a lot from you but are very big. Those are high potential accounts. So that type of scrutiny into who our customers are and who our ideal customer is something that we're working on. We set targets and we track number of sales interventions by that tier as well. So that's another thing that we will start implementing is for that high volume, high potential account, that's a different number of interventions we expect our sales reps to have in a year versus someone who's maintenance. And then we also look at how many days a week we want to set aside for cold calling and new account creation. Another thing that we did was we hired a sales manager. And this is someone who will take these KPIs and use them on a weekly, daily, monthly, quarterly basis with our sales reps, identify those strategic plans, and then make sure we're executing on it. The other thing we will do the first one we've already started implementing is we have a few brand ambassadors to do some social media and some events and really spread word of mouth. And we also will start offering chef incentives on our website to refer other chefs. And again, this came from a gut instinct, but supported by the data that customers' top trusted resources recommendations from other people that they trust. We institute a new commission structure for 2019. So it's a base salary with a higher rate of commission, but on growth only. So if the business grows 0%, they make a base salary, which is a little bit more in line with company achievement. So it's designed to compensate growth. So they are compensated at a higher level, but they achieve that higher level as the company also achieves that higher level. It then sets a target sales cost at 1.2%. And the fail-safe there is that if there is zero growth, the percentage of sales cost is 0.9%. The intended and hoped for effects of this is that we're able to hit targets. And we hit those targets by looking at growth within existing accounts, looking at new business that reps add to the business, and looking at the appropriate number of sales rep interventions. We have hired a new sales rep in January, and we are hoping to have the rep fully trained and ready to go by the start of the growing season. And we hope that this results in sales reps being well paid and the company also meeting its targets. Then we move on to cash flow, which you would think would follow when you don't have sales. So we know cash flow is tight. We're in our line of credit this year, far more than we were last year. Our accounting clerk, we know, is overworked, and as he's expanded his role and taken on new responsibilities beyond just collections. And we also at the time knew that a Canada Post strike was looming, and we still received most of our payments by check in the mail. So we knew that there was going to be a bottleneck there. So the KPIs we look at here, which I think are really, really important from a cash flow perspective, they're kind of your Bible, is how many days do you take to pay your vendors, and how does that compare to how many days it takes your customers to pay you? So we discovered that we get paid on average in 36 days, which is a vast improvement from when we didn't have an accounts clerk at all, and understand that probably a lot of you are in that position as well. So we managed to get it to 36 days, which is great, but we also run a social enterprise, and we make sure we pay farmers on time, and most of them have 30-day terms. Some of them have shorter terms, which actually shortens our average days to pay to 21 days. What that does is it creates bridge financing required, which we do, and that negatively affects our cash flow. And as our business gets bigger, that gap gets bigger, so this problem doesn't go anywhere, it just accumulates year over year. So some of the solutions is we fast-tracked hiring an accounting clerk to report to the previous accounting clerk, who was now promoted to accounts manager, and tasked them first and foremost with an initial focus on AR collections. We also included as part of both of their performance review documents metrics, switching customers to pay by EFT versus check, and targets to get that DSO and DPO closer together. And this is almost exclusively done by increasing attention and focus on collections and not by delaying payments to farmers. So that was really important for us. And the obviously intended effects is that DSO and DPO should get as close to one another as possible. We should be converting a minimum of 60 accounts per year to EFT payments. And we should really only be carrying a balance on the line of credit during the off season. So then we move on to profitability. We generated $8 million in sales, and yet we broke even. I'm personally not thrilled about that situation. Was missing our sales targets the sole cause? So is this just a matter of when you make your targets, you make money, and when you don't make your targets, you don't make money. Personally, I don't think you should run an $8 million business and not make money. So I think we from a gut level thought something else must be happening. Is it exclusive again to just a year where you don't hit your targets? And at what point do we become reliably profitable? So 2017, we sold 7 million, but we're profitable. And so we wanted to find out, to kind of isolate what was happening there. This profitability is important to us for funding opportunities, for profit sharing with our managers, and the overall health of the business. So the KPIs we look at here, obviously gross, you want to know what your gross profit margin is overall, but you also want to know what it is per category. So your gross profit margin obviously is the sales minus the cost of those sales divided by the sales. So we analyzed this again on a weekly basis, and we found beginning at the start of the year, we rarely hit our target of 26.6. We achieved between 23 and 25. In the off season, we expect that because the year-round products we know carry a lower gross margin than your specialty fruits and vegetables throughout the season. So we kept a close eye on that, understanding it was going to be lower than target, but that we expected it to climb, and it never really did. So then we compared two scenarios by further digging into more metrics. We looked at if we had achieved 100% of our 2018 sales target of 8.8 at the existing GP of 24%, would that be better or worse than achieving the sales we did achieve, but at the target GP of 26%? So the $8 million versus $8.8 million, you also have to then factor in the expenses that are directly related to sales, like fuel costs, labor costs, that go down when your sales go down. And so when you factor that in, GP was really the key. That was the golden metric that we could see a larger impact on profitability. And moving forward, as the company grows, it's a far more sustained way to become profitable. So then we also looked at, gross margin is kind of the top of your profit and loss statement. What about everything else? Are we spending too much money to operate the business? That's obviously another place you're going to look. So we have some key, we basically take what our largest accounts are. Payroll was 13.75% for 2018. It had been 15% a couple of years earlier, so that was on track to where we're hoping to get to. Fuel was at 1.7 versus the 1.5 budgeted. We didn't think that was overly significant. And vehicle costs were 4.7 versus 3.7. So on the right-hand side, you can see what that formula is. It's basically you take whatever expense line you want to look at, and you divide it by your income, and it gives you kind of proportionally what does that cost you. So our solutions here was a price review by category. So we looked at different segments of our products and looked at where can the market bear a price increase. We know that on things that like eggs and butter that go into baking, that's very precise. It's not an area that you can easily get a few extra percentage points, but we knew that there were vast swaths of items that we could. We also will be instituting a fee schedule to our vendors for pickup costs to mitigate some of that very expensive cost of procurement in our model. And ultimately, this is about sharing the load. So, sorry. We know that running a local food business where you pick up directly from farms and deliver next day, there's an inherent cost that's not going anywhere. But we realized that we were bearing the costs of our deliveries and the costs of pickup from the vendor side of things. So hopefully what we achieve here is that margin that we can carry forward. And if we hit that 26% margin, we start being profitable at 90% of sales target. We should be more resilient to market forces outside of our control. So if something comes out of the blue and knocks us, it shouldn't knock us over. That's kind of the goal. And if we achieve all of this, it will ensure that we continue to be a viable, sustainable, healthy contributor to a local food economy in Ontario. Well, this is one happy accountant. So in terms of setting the stage to start using KPIs, this is a lot of information, and if you're going to sit down and do it manually or once in a while, it's probably not how you want to be attacking this. So it does require a fantastic bookkeeper. We are lucky to have, I think, one of the best. But the job of a bookkeeper should keep you on track, should make sure that you're compliant and you're logging things appropriately. They should review your work. They should check your work. They should try and poke holes in what you're doing. They should correct you, and they should guide you. You should also be reconciling your accounts as frequently as possible. We do it monthly. And when you do it monthly, you can make decisions in real time. That's the whole reason you would do any of this, is because it allows you to actually run your business in an effective way. And get intimate with your profit and loss statement. So don't, I mean, everyone's going to rush to the bottom. I do too. But then go back and go line by line and say, is this what we expected? Is there a bump here that was unexpected? Did we perhaps log something in the wrong place? Is something really an asset and not an expense? And cash flows aren't just that sick in the tummy feeling about the balance in your bank account. You can't make purchasing decisions, investment decisions moving forward if you don't actually know what your cash flow potential is. So that's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Grace. I think, you laid out some really excellent strategies. I learned a lot from listening to you. And we're going to hand the mic over to Erin Piro, our friend from Farm Credit East. And she's going to help us sort of contextualize and unpack a little bit of what we're hearing from our hubs today. So thank you, Erin, for being here. Erin has been helping farmers large and small make their businesses run better since 2001. As a certified agricultural consultant for Farm Credit East with a background in agricultural economics, Erin's focus is on benchmarking and profitability improvement, because sustainability means economics too. So I'll hand it over to Erin for some of our aha moments.
All right, thanks, Ellie, and thank you, Grace. And since you ended with what a great bookkeeper does for you, Grace, I have a question for you. What do
Sure.
you do for your bookkeeper? As in, can you describe what the bookkeeper's office looks like to us?
Oh, that's awesome. She comes and works with me 2 days a week. She sits next to me, and my office, I can touch both walls of my office at the same time. So we work very closely together, quite literally. She is so I will back up a little bit. We worked with accountants before and bookkeepers before. One thing when we first met, the first thing she said was, let's get on a call before you even make a decision to hire me. Let's get on a call. This needs to be about fit. I'm bossy and opinionated, and if that's not what you're looking for, I'm not for you. And the second I heard that, I thought, oh my God, you are so for me. Because I had been told by previous bookkeepers, you ask too many questions, or don't worry about the numbers, we'll fix them later. And I really, it was really important to me to have someone in who was consultative, and that's exactly what she is.
Awesome. And what I love about that is you said it was an actual office. Yeah, maybe it's tiny because we think of it as non-productive space. But when you say, okay, you can climb up into the hayloft and walk across the mow, and then in that unheated space behind all the extra parts, that's where you sit with your computer. What does that say about how important this is to your business?
Right.
But you have a real office in which you do this work, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple other things that I just thought were amazing about Grace's presentation. And you can do these no matter what size your food hub is. We hear about $8 million in sales and we think, oh man, you can do a lot more than I ever could. But take off a zero, take off 2 zeros if you need to. Every one of us can focus on really identifying the problem at hand, not just rolling up our sleeves and taking the first solution that comes to us. And Grace started out with that by saying, well, just because we didn't hit our sales targets, is that the reason our cash flow is off? And it was a lot more to that, as you showed us. I think that's great. you're able to fix the real problem, not just the first one that showed up or a symptom of that problem.
Yeah, knowing your KPIs helps you to get to 8 million as well. Like, it's not easy to get there if you don't have a path.
Absolutely. Awesome. I think the fact that you were willing to build a team, not just work harder and work more hours to get this done, but realize that investing the time and money in this person, not just the having them there, but that training is going to take a while also.
Yep.
Not, and just for your accountant, for your clerk, but your manager, and then some sales reps that you were working with. That's also, I think, something that we underscore way too much, or we underplay how much time and effort that takes way more often than we should. So good for you guys. I also was really impressed that you follow your mission. Right? You say your job is to pay farmers and pay them on time. And you lived up to that, right? In a tough financial situation for you guys, you found where to get that cash, and it wasn't by squeezing the people you were trying to help. That could be a really easy way to raise cash, but that's not what you set out to do. And in those tight situations, that's where we can get tempted. So I'm so proud of you guys.
Thank you.
And then finally, the category margins. This is sort of a next level in accounting. First you got to get your cost of product separate from all the other expenses that you pay. But then once you're ready to take it to the next level, if you can see the cost of produce compared to the sales of produce, you can do just what Grace said and know, is this carrying its weight or not? Are we making 26% on it or 24% on it? Because those 2%, especially as we look at the Food Hub benchmark, make the difference between breaking even and not. So I think that's a huge point that we can all take home and work with no matter what size business we run.
Awesome. Is that it, Erin? Are we ready to go to the next presenter?
Yeah, back to you, Ellie.
All right, cool. Thank you. It's so nice to have your expertise and be able to zoom out a little bit and understand the ways that other hubs can apply what we learned from Grace. So next up, we're going to hear from Courtney Tellefson and Craig Smith from the Produce Box in Raleigh, North Carolina. Courtney is the founder and CEO of the Produce Box. She set out 11 years ago on a mission to support local farmers and help change our food system one table at a time. Courtney started the Produce Box in her garage, working with one farmer and delivering produce to 25 of her neighbors. Today, her company has 11,000 members across the state of North Carolina, delivering more than 2 million pounds of local produce each year using an army of 250 stay-at-home moms and dads as her delivery drivers. She's also teaching groups in other states how to run similar business models. And she manages to do it all while surviving life with 2 teenagers in the house, which is quite impressive. We'll also hear from Craig Smith, who's the Director of Accounting and HR for the Produce Box. He was raised in a small farming community in eastern North Carolina and attended the University of North Carolina. He began his working career in commercial banking. And after multiple industry changes, Craig began consulting for small and mid-sized companies in financial planning and analysis, strategic planning, and performance data. He met Courtney through a donation program of a company he was working with, and the rest is history. So Courtney and Craig, take it away.
Okay, so thank you. All right, so obviously we're going to talk about knowing our numbers. And I guess the first thing we want to do is tell you a little bit about our story. I started in 2008, so we're starting our 12th season now. And basically, we hand deliver boxes of produce and artisan food to the doorsteps of our members every week. So we have 11,000 members, but they're not all ordering in one given week. Usually it's about 50% one week, 50% the other. Our members can customize their boxes, so they can order just the default box is what we call it, just whatever that curated box is and the items in that box. They can do that and order just the box. They can swap 1 or 2 items in and out of their box. They can add additional produce or additional non-produce items, or they can completely customize from scratch. And before we get started, I think it's really important for us to go through the model and sort of how the cycle works. So we create the menu of boxes on Wednesday and Thursday for the next week. We go live with that menu on Friday afternoon, so everybody gets an email saying the menu is open. The members go online from Friday until Sunday night, and they place their order. And again, remember, an order for us isn't just the box. It's the box plus add-ons, okay? Then on Monday, Jake and Joe call all the farmers and let them know what our orders are on Monday morning. Tuesday, we receive and inspect the product. We pack the boxes Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we deliver them Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay? Currently, we have about 11,000 members. I think that was on the other slide. And we're delivering about 220,000 orders every year. And that's been pretty consistent, hasn't it, Craig, for the last 3 or 4 years?
It has been.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Craig, you want to talk a little bit about the other components of our business model?
So we primarily look at our revenue KPIs every day, and our revenue KPIs are built upon what our net membership is. We have membership that we have look at based upon how many net members we have, what drives the increases or decreases of those memberships. We use trends based upon the time of the year, whether or not we're in a re-enrollment period, a promotion period. And we also determine what drives the membership in each village. And our revenues from that membership, we look at how many order every week, depending on the number of boxes. We have a box revenue category that we look at based upon whether it's a default box, whether it's a market box, whether we have add-on type products, which are things that may be swapped out or changed within, which gives us our order revenue amounts. Our order percentage is a KPI that we use based on our number of members divided by our orders. And our orders are based upon, our actual orders are based upon the members times our order percentage. And typically our number of boxes that we sell that's handled every week is about 1% above what our orders are. Some orders may be 2 or 3 boxes. So we use those KPIs to look at from a standpoint to determine where our revenue portions will be for the week.
Yeah, I was just going to say that our whole budget is predicated on those numbers. So when Craig presents, when we start looking at our budget for the year, we look at what our revenue was per box last year, what our order percentage was last year, what our revenue was per order. So how many members were ordering add-ons, because that'll increase your order revenue, right? And what our net membership was, how many cancellations we had last year and how many new members we had last year. And then we put all of those numbers into the budget, and then that takes care of it, basically. Okay. All right, so how about expenses, Craig?
So from an expense category, we basically have 3 large expenses. The 2 largest are going to be our food costs and our packing costs. Our food cost percentages we break out in 2 different ways. And what we have found is that the trends from the box are extremely consistent, even to the week, because of what products might be coming off or out of the field. And we can determine based upon that seasonability of the year of what's coming. We also carry our artisan type products, which are not as consistent. It's pretty much going to be based on what our members are looking for during the year from a consistency standpoint. So we base our food cost on percentages. How much we buy is going to depend on the quantity of what may be coming in, the size and the portioning that go into our boxes. And what determines our cost is going to be what's available during the season, what the members want. And we have even taken it a step further from our food cost scenario to determine who we're buying from is going to be based upon pricing. It's going to be based upon their supply. And it's actually going to be based upon relationships as well. And one of the things that we do that we feel we have an upper hand in with our farmers is we pay them COD when they come in the door. So we look at the product and we write them a check if we've accepted. And we make our determination also some weeks based upon whether we buy in bulk or not. Is it something that we can store to the next week? How long can we store it? And are we discounted on those particular items because we're able to buy it in bulk? Also, from a food cost scenario, we're going to look at it based upon what's in the boxes, the price tolerance, the product availability, the member favorites that I talked about, which is all correlating to our overall food costs. And we use our KPIs to actually determine what we want to put in the particular boxes. One of the areas that I did want to mention as a factor that we monitor is going to be waste also. So what is acceptable to us and what is acceptable in the industry when the food is brought in? Is some of it going to spoil quicker, or are we going to have to cull it out? Is it something that we're not going to accept because the product is not a type product that we're looking for? And as a cost control for us, when it's sent back, are we getting the proper returns? Are we getting the credits? Are we getting additional produce that it comes in? And if we have to buy extra that particular week because we didn't get it from the farmer and we have to go to the farmer's market, then we're paying more for it and it's going to drive our food costs up.
Yeah, those were two ahas for me, was that last thing you said, Craig, about getting the proper credit, because I can remember when you first started, so we would send some produce back and then Craig would say, so did we got a credit for that, I'm assuming? And, the guys in the hub would be like, oh, yeah, we made a note on the invoice. But it didn't follow all the way through, right, Craig? Like, there would be a note on the invoice, but then what's the process of making sure that it gets all the way to our bookkeeper and then make sure that we actually get the credit? And in some cases, the note might be on the invoice, but it never followed through all the way to the farmer to give us a credit, right?
It didn't. And a lot of time that was a relationship with the farmer. We have a great relationship with our farmers because not only do they try and look out for us, but we try and look out for them as well during that process. And it helps to have good relationships with them in the process.
The other thing I wanted to say was keeping accurate records. So this was big for us. So, it's what we think we're going to spend on a box versus what we ended up spending. So let's just say it's, it's Thursday afternoon and we're building our boxes and building our menu. And Jake tells me that the broccoli in the box is going to cost, I'm just going to totally make this up, 75 cents a bunch, right? And he's figured that out because the farmer said it was going to be this many bunches per case. And it used to be that's really kind of the numbers we used to figure out what our box costs were, and we never really looked back at it again. But again, Craig came in and said, well, what did it really end up costing us? And it's possible that next week it wasn't, 15 broccoli heads to a case, it was 12, which meant that the cost of every broccoli went up, and so that's been really important to make sure that we know really what we spent on that box. Okay, so then we've got packing. So we've got food cost as part of the box cost. Then we have packing, right? And those are adjusted every week. And do you want to talk about how we adjust our packing?
I will. So when we first began looking at packing, we had two types of boxes that we used. One was the default box that a member typically gets, and one was a market box, which allowed them to pick the products that they wanted to put in their box. And so we were looking at the cost of handling a market box and the cost of handling a default box. The market box, because of handling, obviously was a lot more. So as we began offering in our boxes more opportunities to swap out products, things began moving more toward handling. So now, in order to offset that, we look at a KPI based upon the handling of a box itself overall. So we allot 2 things each week based upon the number of boxes that we sell. One is the dollar amount of the payroll, and the other is the hours associated with those dollar amounts. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if we sell 5,000 boxes and it costs us $2 a box to handle it, then that's going to be that particular week $10,000 worth of packing payroll allotted. And then we'll take that figure and divide it by what our average pay is per hour to the packers.
Let's just say it's $11. So if we had $10,000 to spend in a week, because we knew we wanted to spend $2 per box on packing, mm-hmm. that means we had 5,000 boxes, right? So we had 5,000 boxes times $2 a box, $10,000 we could spend on packing, divided by $11 an hour. Ends up being around 900 hours.
And so our hub operations individuals look at that and set their budget every week based on what they come in on Monday morning and see the number of boxes that we've sold. Mm-hmm. So our allotted dollars and hours are changed and monitored each week.
Yeah, I mean, and all of that's based on member behavior. I mean, we used to only have 3 boxes, and that used to be okay, and we never customized. And then we let them swap one thing out. And then we let them swap 2 things out. Then we added, a bunch of add-ons. And so that member behavior of wanting the variety and the customization has adjusted that. In terms of process improvement, I just want to say it's the process of packing the box. And it doesn't mean we have a stopwatch out there and we're saying, all right, this box took, 3 minutes to pack and this box took 2 minutes. It's really more about rating the level of difficulty of a box. So when we're looking at a big group of boxes, like we have 8 boxes, let's just say that we're building 8 different boxes, how many of those require portioning? Like how many of those do we need to weigh out a pound of green beans and put it in the box? I mean, that's going to take a lot longer to pack that box. Therefore, it's going to be more expensive. You don't have to stopwatch that. You just know it. And so if we're offering 8 boxes, we may want to have 2 or 3 that are quick to pack, bam, 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 bam. And then a few that require customization, but you wouldn't want, require portioning. We just want to try to have a good balance there, wouldn't you say?
I would.
Okay. So.
And one of the things that the guys have always been asked to look at that has really rung with me and what Courtney says is that we want to do it right, not rushed.
Right.
To make sure that the members are getting the value that they feel they are.
Well, because if you're rushing, then you're not being careful about portion, about placement in the box, quality, all of that. Okay, last thing for cost of a box, we've got food, we've got labor, now delivery.
So what we do with delivery is we basically have a routing cost worksheet that we use that we created based upon a per box cost through our P&L. And we used the routing cost worksheet to determine what it's actually costing us if it's profitable or a non-profitable route per box. Mm-hmm. So we work through that worksheet and determine if we're delivering enough boxes on that route for us to be running the truck that particular way.
Yeah, if the box numbers are going down, we might consolidate 2 trucks into one route, right? Or if orders are going up in a particular area, we might split that route into 2 trucks.
So the actual controls that we have over that is our truck stop locations. If we need to change a route, how many of our coordinators are there to pick up the boxes for delivery, and the time spent at those truck stops and the locations.
Okay. So then the final thing to look at is how we're building those boxes. So we're balancing profitability, right? We're looking at the food costs plus the labor costs plus delivery. So we're thinking about that on Thursday when we're building the boxes. But then we also have to think about our customers' needs and our farmers' needs, right? And so all of this tracking and thinking and trending goes into that weekly meeting. And, you know, in the beginning, it was just two of us. It was just my partner and I, really. And we would sort of go with our gut on what to put in the boxes. But I'll tell you, when your bookkeeper tells you that one of your boxes is losing money every week, that'll make you sit up in your chair. And I remember it was the garden box back then. And Jana said, did you know that you're losing money on the garden box? And I said, well, but aren't we making money on the rest of them? And she was like, well, yes. And I said, well, then, I mean, that's okay. I mean, as long as we're overall making money, it'd be fine. Isn't that right? And she was like, no, you cannot lose money on anything. And so we ended up raising the price, and we created a message about why we were raising the price. And anyway, it was a big deal because realizing that you have to look at profitability on a per product basis was really a huge aha for me. And for us, the product is that whole box itself. So when we're building that box, we're thinking about three things. Like I said, we're thinking about the needs of the farmer. So what does the farmer need to get out of their fields? We're thinking about the wants of the customer. So what are they getting tired of? What would make them buy the box? Is there a downer in the box? And I was talking to Jeff about this yesterday, I think, about what are some of the downers that'll make somebody not buy a box. So I think he guessed eggplant, which is, yes, it's a downer, and cabbage for us is a downer. If we put cabbage in the box, the sales go down. And then also expense, because like we said, every box has to be profitable. And then the way that we do that is that we use, and this is just a few little snippets, but we have a worksheet in our site that helps us figure this out. So like, for example, the harvest box, you can see sort of how we plan it out. It's what the unit is, what the cost is, and how many of each of those we're putting in. You can see that in the harvest and the garden box. We also look at remember we were talking about the value to the member. So that's what the member would pay for that product if they went to the farmer's market. Okay? And then what we're charging for that box. So in the case of this, I think this is the harvest box. In the case of the harvest box, if they went to the farmer's market and bought it, it would be $24.75, and we're charging $28.50. So in our mind, that's pretty good, because the difference between value and retail is the cost of that delivery, is what we're thinking the consumer is thinking. So you can look at a couple of those. We do some burger boxes with add-ons in there and a mini harvest box. And then, of course, that last little square there is food cost and fixed costs, and then our gross profit margin. So on every box, when we're building it, we can see what our food cost is. We add in all of our overhead and operational expenses, and we split that out by box. And then that gives us our final profit on the box. And we have a parameter that we try to stay in for every box. So somebody was asking if every box is profitable and if every box has about the same amount of profit. And the answer to that is yes, pretty close. So even if we're selling a garden box for $22 or $23? Or a backyard burger box for $30. Well, that's not really true. That $30 box makes a little more profit. But most of our regular boxes all make about the same profit. Is that a good way to explain it, Craig?
It is.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. And that's us.
Excellent.
Excellent
Thank
job
you guys.
also, you guys.
That attention to detail is super impressive.
Thank you.
Erin, you want to give us some thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think it echoes what Grace said, right? About knowing your numbers helps you decide where you want to go. And you don't have to have a loss leader. I think that's a myth in our culture of how you do business. But do you want to give something away just for the sake of the volume, right? That's the old joke about making it up on volume. And it really doesn't work when you want to be able to pay people a decent wage. You need to be profitable to do that. So you guys are doing a fantastic job of looking at your own numbers and comparing how it changes from year to year, day to day, month to month, week to week, whatever the appropriate time period is. And we all have that tool we can take advantage of. I think a lot of us just don't dive into the numbers. Maybe it's because both Craig and Courtney are so into it, just like Grace is. But, what makes you look at that every day before you do anything else?
What makes us look at it every day?
Yeah. What makes you look at the numbers every day before you do anything else?
Craig?
I think the most important thing for us initially is when we're looking at it over the weekend. I mean, all of our people, we've tried to teach them the business aspects of it,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just understanding produce and product. And so they have to know exactly what they're looking at to know how to order. They have to understand whether it's something that can be stored for a day or two. They have to understand the pricing in the marketplace to know that the prices they're getting are real. And so that's where it starts, is on Monday. And then carrying into the next day with knowing the labor force and how many hours is going to be needed to handle those boxes becomes crucially important. And that's monitored daily.
Yeah, so from our perspective, well, in our business, everyone looks at the numbers for different reasons. So for me and my accounts clerk, we know that we have on the 13th every month, our entire credit card balance is paid. So we need to make sure there's money in the bank. We also have payroll every 2 weeks. We pay our vendors every week. All of those, as you can imagine, have become sizable payments, and we need to make sure that we're running the business in a way that ensures there's always money in the bank to pay your staff and pay your vendors. So those are the real heart attack moments that, if you don't know your numbers, can feel really scary. But from other standpoints, our pack team manager needs to know how many people to pull in to pack each night. A lot of his employees are part-time. Drivers, we need to schedule drivers. We need to know whether we need 8 drivers in a day or 6 drivers in a day. So there are real world day-to-day decisions that are made that you can't make without knowing.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said, that when something's happening, it's not a surprise. So if you look at it every day, you're going to get a little bit of a heads up that something's happening. And sometimes if you wait a month or a quarter, you've already missed the boat. It could be a positive trend that you really want to, it could be a positive trend in terms of expenses and you want to complement your team, or it could be a positive turn in what people are buying and you want to change. I mean, you just need to be ready to change quickly, especially in this industry right now. It's crazy, the business to consumer area. It's changing every day.
We're also very transparent with this with our management team. So we show them our financials on our monthly basis. They all understand very acutely which accounts in the profit and loss statement their job directly relates to. And, so the pack team manager understands that if they're not turning inventory over properly and not alerting sales reps when something's about to expire, that waste GL grows. And so they also are all on profit share. So they understand that, we're all pulling in the same direction for the same reason.
Awesome. And I think what you guys are underscoring here, right, to sum it up in one word, is communication. And so often we become information hoarders rather than information sharers because it's sensitive, like financials, or you were raised in a need-to-know culture and you think other people don't. But look at how much these guys are able to accomplish when they share that kind of information. And then they can manage it, right? Whether it's jumping on a trend that's headed up or cut back when it's headed down. So good on you guys. Courtney, I think we came up when we were practicing, but you talked about how much inventory you guys carry. Can you expand on that a little bit more and what that decision does for your business?
Yes, we carry very little inventory. So what's unique is that we're only ordering what our members order with a little bit of buffer, and we even track that buffer. So we know when we're measuring waste, we know how much we had left over at the end of the week, and there might be a particular farmer or a particular product that we overbought the week before, and so we're looking at what's left over on Friday, and then that helps us decide how we're going to order the following week, and so that we actually look at those trends. So we know that we need to buy extra broccoli. We need to have we literally have it down to the percentage. So we know that broccoli needs a 2% buffer, but onions need a 0% buffer. Or maybe last week onions we ended up running out of onions, and we had to go buy more, like Craig said, and we bought it at a higher price. And so we need to add a buffer. So for me, it's tracking to know how much to buy the following week. Craig, anything else you can think of?
No, I agree. Primary inventory that we carry anyway are artisan type products, and most of that during the week. And one of the reasons that it's means so much to be a part of this company is that if we have bought some and it can't be stored, we donate that at the end of the year, at the end of the week, and that's tracked also. So carrying the inventory or little inventory helps us from a food cost scenario. Mm-hmm. Plus any that we have extra from a donation standpoint makes us and our employees feel good about what we're doing in the community.
Awesome. And how about you, Grace? How much does the amount of inventory you carry affect your working capital?
Well, we also inventory very little in terms of fresh perishable products. We inventory dry goods. We started also to inventory things from a profitability perspective. We thought if we could take inventory of things like potatoes, for example, or eggs, once a week. We know our par levels pretty closely. Our wholesale manager is pretty good at predicting what we need for the week. If we take inventory of that on a Monday and by Friday we've run out, then that saves us from a cost perspective of driving to that farm 4 times a week. So for some items, we've decided to inventory to help with cash flow, to help with profitability. And in some cases, we specifically don't inventory because things are highly perishable and highly ordered with a high level of variability. So we look at that actually quite closely.
Awesome. And I think you guys are both underscoring too that, okay, with perishable product, you can't keep it, but with non-perishable product, it's easy to buy a lot to save on it, but then you got money tied up on a shelf until you're ready to sell it. So knowing how much you need keeps you from overbuying, and therefore your dollars are working harder for you rather than resting in storage.
For sure. And in terms of, like, we looked at of our total revenue, what percentage is fresh fruits and vegetables, and it's actually quite high. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 36%. So that 36% of perishable is just in time. So similar to the produce box, when we pick up at farms, it's sold orders only that we're picking up in terms of fresh fruits and vegetables. The stuff that we inventory tends to turn over, and that's why it's really important to keep an eye on expiration dates and first in, first out and all that inventory related stuff. But we try and carry as little fresh fruit and vegetable as possible for the same reasons.
Good. I also love that at the produce box, you're using a system of checks and balances. So you set it as what we think we're going to spend on it and then what we actually spent on it. And in agriculture, when you buy something by the box and then sell it by the pound, or buy it by the bag and then sell it by the each or the dozen, that doesn't always translate exactly as you think. And then when you have staff that are selling and maybe have the ability to affect pricing or give better deals to customers, boy, those margins can get affected in a hurry. So I think it's fantastic that you're looking at that. And then maybe you could tell us just, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say it does make it hard. And so when we're working with new farmers, there's definitely a learning curve. And especially for younger farmers, if they haven't sold to us that way, it's, sometimes they're dumping, they're like, oh, I don't know how many there are in the case. Let me dump it out, and right. I mean, if you're buying 30 cases of something or 50 cases of something, I mean, it might be right for a few of them, but then as you get farther down the pallet, that's happened where it gets bigger and bigger. Those zucchini keep getting bigger. Mm-hmm.
So how do you lay out that expectation at the beginning so you get what you want and they're not disappointed that you don't need it or want it when they get it to you?
That's a great question. I think it's with new farmers, we're taking a chance, really. I mean, sometimes we'll give them a measurement of kind of what we're looking for, but it's a balance because you don't want to, we want to buy as much of their harvest as we can from them, but we also have to be fair to our customers and be good stewards of the finances of the company. So I think it's just a lot of talking and a lot of feedback, and they're happy to be working with us, and so they're open to listening to what we have to say. But sometimes, it'll be somebody that we've worked with forever, and there's nothing they can do about it. I mean, if Herbie Cottle, if he gets rain, it kind of is what it is. If something happened, I mean, we could be working with a farmer that we've worked with forever, but if something happens over the weekend, I mean, what can he do about it, really?
It's really
Right.
It becomes more of a relationship that we have with the farmers, with knowing our expectation and us knowing their capability. And that's what drives a lot of it for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that they know that when they come in, that we're going to try to be fair about what we look at. Obviously, it's got to work for us. It is an advantage for us to be able to pay them when they come in and we accept the product, which actually helps us in getting our supply from them. They know that if we're paying them COD, basically, and others locals that they sell to, maybe grocery stores or such, maybe paying them in 90 or 120 days, then we'll probably get serviced pretty well.
Yeah, I like that you say that. It's about.
I'm sorry, just to jump in on that. Sometimes if they have messed up, they'll just bring us extra. So a lot of times we can call Herbie, call Joe or whoever and say, hey, the count ended up being off. Can you bring us some more? And they'll do that. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, I think just, to underscore that point of setting the expectation, right? Something we don't often do because tomatoes are tomatoes, but by the same token, it's got to work for both of you. So if you're willing to say that out loud, it's going to be a win all the way around. So Ellie, you mentioned a quote you liked. I read one this week that said, it's unkind to be unclear. So that was one that I'm taking to heart. And then the last one, you guys talked also about how you're figuring labor per box, and you're not timing people with a stopwatch, which could be fraught with pitfalls of, well, I'm working faster when somebody's watching me, or I got a lot of steam at the beginning, but I'm going to run out as I get tired. So how do you figure what labor is going to be needed to put in those boxes?
So this was a big change for us this year. So for years and years, we were trying to look at, we have something called a market box, which is fully customized from scratch. And then we have the regular boxes, the curated boxes. And for years and years and years, we would say, okay, it costs us this much to do a curated box that doesn't change, because those are fast. I mean, let's just pretend that the regular boxes cost us 72 cents, let's just say. To go down that line, because you're doing, 100 of them or 200 or 300 of them. And then we'd look at the market box where it was stop and start, because, you can put anything, every single box is different. And let's just say it was $5 to do those market boxes. And we would try to budget our market box labor per box compared to our regular box labor per box. And Craig last year was like, okay, this is getting crazy. And actually we realized that almost every box really is customized. They're either swapping something out or changing it or adding it. And so we went to across the board one number for all the boxes.
And
right?
we did, and we did it based upon not only what the handling was at the time, but we also used the last couple of years to see what the changes were. Mm-hmm. And so we have a history that we kept records of to know where we thought the boxes should be. And it's proved pretty true.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think that's a great way to say, you don't have to have everything to the penny, but as soon as you can get your head around a system that works for you, test it out to make sure that it makes sense on the other end, because everything looks good on paper, and run with that. You can always tweak that system along the way. It's not a forever decision, but understanding how much it's costing you to do the different things that you offer is huge in order to make your price make sense for both you and the customer. So also excellent job, guys. Glad to have all three of you here. This is really exciting to see this stuff put into practice.
So I think we have a ton of great questions from the audience. So we'll try to get through as many of those as we can in the next couple of minutes. One that comes up time and time again, and a couple of different people asked us, is what kind of software you all use to track both, your orders and your sales and that sort of thing, and your KPIs. So any software suggestions are always appreciated.
Maybe I'll jump in here. We use SAP Business One, and I will say it was a beast to first install, or not install, but to kind of build the system and everything. But it is very robust. It is seamless from front-facing e-commerce ordering right back into our accounting system, right back to purchase order generation. And everything we do now is automated. And if you can get to automation faster versus slower, it's just going to allow you to do all this stuff so much better. So that was one of the things I regretted, was waiting as long as I did. It was just so cumbersome to build, and we didn't have the staff that we do now. So it was a ton of resources and time dedicated to it. But I, if anything, wish I'd done it sooner.
In our case, we have our own software because our model is so unique with these ladies and guys that are delivering. There is no software out there. Even now, there's no software that supports our model. And so we created our own, and we also use QuickBooks. So all of the accounting on a per customer basis is handled in our own software. We call it Silo. And then it's moved by line item journal entry.
Journal entries.
To QuickBooks.
Cool, thanks guys. And I'll put in a shameless plug for the NGFN Food Hub listserv, which is a great place to ask those types of questions and to dig into the archives and see what other people have said historically. It's a question that we get a lot. Another thing was about the way that you analyze your gross margin. People are wondering if you do that like with a dollar amount or if it's all percentage based. For both hubs, I think.
Yeah, it's percentage based for us. We've like thousands of SKUs now, so to look at absolute dollars, you'd have to look at item on an item per item basis. So we look at category of item and we look at percentage.
We're similar. We use percentages a lot more now than what we used to, because that gives us a better indication based on our sales and the makeup of our model, so that we can track them based upon cost, packing, and such, especially of our larger expense items.
Cool. This is actually a really interesting question, and it might be more appropriate for you, Erin. KPIs are obviously really applicable for the profit side of a business, but have you ever seen people use them for other indicators like sustainability or, the community impacts? Can you use these tools to track other things besides finances?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, once you figure out what it is that you want to measure, then you can use that to track that. So, I mean, safety is an important one that a lot of companies measure, right? Number of incidents or things like that, or days without an incident. How many people are complying with certain, safety protocols. So we see that a lot in the quote rest of the world. But if there's something that you want to measure, on the production side, it may be rate of gain on our sheep farm. How many pounds per week are the lambs gaining? You name it. If you can figure out a way to measure it, then it can absolutely be used as a KPI.
Cool.
Yeah, I might jump in here as well. Like for us, one of the things and I'm sure it's shared by everyone on this call, is company culture, and whether we're running the business in a way that makes people want to work there. So we, every couple of years, in addition to sending a survey out to our customers, we survey our staff on a number of different metrics on how the company performs, interdepartmental communication, if they're getting what they want from their own managers, from Paul and I. So we measure a lot of different metrics related to company culture and job satisfaction as well.
Cool.
I'll jump in and tell you that we look at the amount that we spend with each farmer every year. And it's not really to look at how much we're spending, but how much the farmers are making. So we evaluate whether our farmers are increasing their sales to us every year, which ones are and which ones aren't. And I look at that myself so that I can have a conversation with the hub team about that. And then Duke University, the kids there, the students are working on a social impact measurement. And I think we're their beta test. So
cool.
I think they're almost done. So I'd be happy to share that what they're measuring. And then finally, we do weekly satisfaction surveys on our customers. So we have about 600 customers that reply back to us on a weekly basis that help us evaluate that.
Cool.
Great.
So yeah,
And also in our
really
farm
applicable.
credit life, for instance, we serve customers, the farmers at their farm. So one of the things we look at is how many miles were driven. So if we're worried about staff not getting out on the farm enough because they're texting or using technology to communicate, we have a way to know, oh, you're only driving an average of 200 miles a month. That's not a lot, but man, if you're putting on 1,000 miles a month, you're really out there in the field, getting to see people. So figure out what it is you want to measure, and you can set a KPI around it.
Excellent. This is an interesting question about the way that you've used KPIs to educate your farmers. Courtney, I believe you mentioned that there were a couple products that you've noticed sort of are down products and they are, less appreciated by your customers. Is that the kind of thing that you've been able to then educate your farmers about and ask them for more of the things that people seem to like?
Yes, so that's a fun conversation. So, so there are downers, but the bottom line is they still need to sell their product. So the cabbage guy has to sell his cabbage, and so we're in that menu meeting. I don't really have that conversation with the farmer, honestly. We just try to make it happen. So if we're building a box and Jake says we need to sell cabbage for John. And I go, well, cabbage is kind of a downer. And he goes, I know, but we need to get it out. So then we try to build a box around that cabbage that's, I'm going to just use the word sexy. So, so then we're like, okay, how can we sexy up this box? So we might put double blueberries in the box with the cabbage to help him get his cabbage sales up. And that's what's pretty cool about it is that, that cabbage guy may not have sold as much cabbage as he did if we hadn't put those blueberries in there with it. So it's pretty neat because the blueberry guy is helping the cabbage guy, and they don't even know each other.
Right.
So
cool.
That answers your question, but we try to mitigate it by building a box that is more sexy, I guess.
Makes sense to me.
We do also track waste in separate GLs as well on our profit and loss statement. And one of them is, so we have like spoilage or breakage at 100 km foods. We have, things, as you mentioned, from splitting cases. And then we have quality from the farm. And ideally, at the end of the year, that GL account should always be at 0. So if the issue is that there was bad quality that came in from the farm, that should be credited back. And I think, Courtney, you mentioned something about that as well, making sure that goes back. That's a really nice way to educate farmers that the quality needs to be there, because you don't pay for it if they're shipping you subpar levels of quality off the farm. So that's one KPI that we measure that sort of is an education piece. It's, the days of chefs taking subpar quality because local food is a new, novel, charming thing to do are kind of over. And we are competing with food that comes in from all over the world. And we need to have that quality level as high as possible.
Grace, you are so right. That's one of the things that we're not doing a good job of. We're not keeping track of it for the whole year and then having that conversation with George about, well, we sent back this much to you. But boy, it's true on the consumer end, because it used to be that we would try to educate our members to accept, the blemished zucchini and the blemished corn and the apples, and it all used to be fine. But I'm telling you, they don't accept it as much anymore. I don't care how much you educate them, they don't want it. And for some people, it's an issue where they don't want a blemished apple because that's food that they're losing. They're going to have to cut that away. And so that's been really challenging for us the last couple of years, is just managing the balance between educating members about what's coming off, what real food looks like when it's coming out of the fields, and what our customers' expectation is for perfect piece.
Yeah, and I will say it's not aesthetically perfect that what we're looking for, because most of our customers are chefs. So your market is totally different than ours. Most of our food, when it goes out to our chefs, it's getting processed. Rarely in a fine dining restaurant is anything ever plated whole or even recognizable from how it came in. But for us, it's quality. So if a chef is having to cut away half of something and throw it in the garbage, that's not acceptable.
So in the interest of time, I just wanted to ask each of you in like, one or two sentences to give some advice to hubs that are overwhelmed or sort of freaked out by the idea of KPIs. And what advice would you give to a new hub or a hub that's looking to sort of get to the next level? Erin, you want to go first?
Sure. I think it's, if you look at what the big picture is, what is it that you want to know in order to be able to move your business forward? And from there, what would you do differently once you have that information? Because we can spend all kinds of time running around and collecting data points or putting money into systems to gather the data. But if you're not going to use it at the end of the day, it's not worth collecting. So think about how you want to manage your business and how that particular number or that information can help you get to where you want to go. And then set about a practical way to gather it so that you're actually going to use it and who you're going to share it with. And maybe it's not something you have to do yourself. Maybe you can put a team member on it so you can not only share the knowledge, but share the workload.
Cool. All right, let's see. Courtney and Craig, do you guys have any advice?
I think the most important thing is to try and understand your expenses and your large categories first and make that determination and keep your records for that so you can control those costs, understand what makes them up in the process, and think through the process and determine what that KPI is to control that particular category.
Cool. Grace?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of having other people ask me about my business, and if it's a question I can't answer, it's something I probably should look up. So we didn't start, you don't know what you don't know. So we didn't start out, I didn't know what a KPI was. I was in the same boat as everyone who's right now saying, oh my God, how do I even do this? Once, we took on investors in 2014 and they started asking questions. So that calculation of, payroll to sales, fuel cost to sales, that wasn't something I knew to track. That was asked of me. They said, well, what percentage is your payroll to revenue? And I said, 1 second. And I did the calculation and didn't realize that was something that would be important to know. So if you have investors, if you have other industry partners or friends who have businesses or Google, look up what a bank might want to look at what an investor might be interested in. Understand balance sheet is a really good example. I still am so cloudy on what does a good balance sheet look like depending on what someone is looking at in your business. But Google's your best friend. So look at, what ratios show your liquidity, what ratios show how much debt you can take on. You won't know to ask everything. I mean, I think gross margin is an obvious one, profit is an obvious one, but there are a ton of other metrics that give you really good information. And Google is your best friend. And if you don't have Google as a best friend, find a best friend who knows what they're talking about.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to do a quick wrap up, but I just wanted to say that I think the biggest lesson that I have learned from, hearing you all talk about this is how finely you all know the details of your business. That sort of classic entrepreneur attitude of I'll just work harder and hopefully that'll solve the problems is not the answer. It's get to know your business really, really well. So thank you all for your wisdom and for letting us look under the hoods of your operations, and Erin for your expertise. I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping notes. To close us out. This webinar, as all of our webinars are, will be recorded and posted at ngfn.org/webinars. We have, I think, 90 at this point, a lot of which focus on hub finances if you want to get further into this topic. So please take a look there. We also are lucky to have a community of practice in Wallace Center called the Food Systems Leadership Network, which is geared towards building the capacity of local food community-based nonprofits. They offer a ton of amazing services that are usually free, so please check out the Food Systems Leadership Network. One such service that they're offering this month and next month is the Nonprofit Bootcamp Leadership e-learning series. So that's going to be a set of webinars that are meant to empower food systems leaders to strengthen their capacity and the effectiveness of their nonprofit organizations. The first one is February 14th at 2 p.m. Central Time. So feel free to check that out at the links listed here. And then the other set of webinars that we wanted to recommend are from the Legal Food Hub, and those are going to give you some information about the legal aspects of running these types of businesses. So look that up, legalfoodhub.org. So that's it, other than the fact that you can always reach out to us at Wallace Center at contact@ngfn.org. And lastly, let me remind you to take our survey. It really helps us improve the quality of our webinars for you all. And thank you to all of our attendees who joined us today, and an extra special thank you to our presenters for giving us such a great presentation. And this ends the webinar. Have a great day.